After I quit my job, my whole family was furious. My mother-in-law called me a useless and profitable waste of space. My sister-in-law accused me of not being a real man, lacking responsibility. My wife handed me a prepared divorce agreement and said I originally wanted you to take care of the child I had for someone else before we talked about divorce. But now I can't wait another minute. However, looking at the ugly faces of my family, I actually felt a rush of excitement. The reason was simple. No one knew that I had quit my job today because my grandfather, the richest man in the country, had acknowledged me as his grandson and told me to quit my job and come home to inherit his billion-dollar company. Chapter 1. I stood at the door, trying to calm my excitement about becoming the heir to a multi-billion-dollar company. I wiped my sweaty palms on my pants, but just as I was about to open the door, I heard voices coming from inside. A woman's voice said, "Why is George still not back? I'm starving, and I don't even know what he's so busy with every day. He hasn't made any money, and the house is falling apart. I really don't understand what use he is." This was my mother-in-law's voice. Even though I was outside, I could almost imagine her disgusted expression. I glanced at my watch. I had just had a brief chat with my grandfather, so I was about 10 minutes late. I had been an orphan before and longed for a family. So after I got married, I lived with my wife, mother-in-law and sister-in-law. As the saying goes, 3 women make a drama, and I was no stranger to their bullying. But I never minded. I always thought women had sharp tongues but soft hearts. However, hearing this now, I still found it somewhat unpleasant. I didn't open the door but stood there, continuing to listen. My wife, Willow, snorted coldly and said, "You know what George is like, lazy and good at slacking off. Don't worry, when he finally makes dinner, I'll find an excuse to start a fight with him like I did before, and make him kneel on the washboard while we eat." With those words, all 3 women laughed. Whenever I worked late, Willow would always make a scene at the dinner table. Whether it was over salty dishes or bland soup, she'd find something to argue about. Most of the time I'd end up hungry, kicked out of the house, or sometimes forced to kneel on the washboard. I had thought it was just a coincidence, but now I realized it was all a deliberate attempt to humiliate me. Chapter 2. Laughter echoed from inside the room, but I felt a cold chill run down my spine. After standing there for a while, I finally forced my expression into a cold one, opened the door and walked in. As soon as I entered, the laughter immediately stopped. 3 similarly impatient faces turned toward me. My mother-in-law said, "You're so late. Where the hell have you been? Why are you standing there? Get to the kitchen and cook." She glanced at me, and when she noticed I wasn't holding any food, her expression darkened. She pointed a finger at me and said, "Did you not even buy any groceries? Are you planning to starve us 3 women?" Willow immediately stood up, her anger rising. "George, you better give me a good explanation, or I won't let you off so easily." Just as I was about to speak, my sister-in-law Maria, who had been looking at her phone, exclaimed in surprise, "What's going on with you? I just heard from my friend that you quit your job. You made such a big decision all by yourself. Are you planning to live off us at home, enjoying life like some useless men?" Both Willow and my mother-in-law asked in unison. "What? You quit your job?" My mother-in-law, looking like she was about to explode, said, "You know the mortgage is over $5,000 a month, and Willow only makes $4,000. We were counting on your salary to help pay the mortgage, and you still had the nerve to quit your job. Have you lost your mind?" Willow was trembling with anger. She demanded, "Did you really quit your job? Tell me it's some kind of misunderstanding. You didn't quit, right? Please tell me you didn't quit." I frowned deeply, feeling a mix of annoyance and disappointment. Even though I was frustrated, I still tried to explain. "Yes, I quit my job, but it's because I found my..." But before I could finish my sentence, Willow slapped me hard across the face. I covered my cheek, feeling a sharp pain in my heart. I said, "Don't you care why I quit? What if I've been through something difficult? What if I've faced something I can't overcome? Or what if I have a better opportunity waiting for me?" Willow seemed to think she had heard a joke. She scoffed. "Difficult? Who doesn't face setbacks at work?" "Yes. I sit in an office all day where I'm shielded from the elements while you have to run outside delivering takeout in the rain or wind. That's definitely much harder. But so what? You know I need money, so you should just give me money. I'm telling you, you need to go to your boss right now. Even if you have to kneel and beg or lick their boots, you'd better get your job back, or don't even bother coming back home. I've always been a quiet person, and hearing these painful words left me speechless with rage. My mother-in-law squinted at me, watching me closely. What do you mean a better opportunity? A useless person like you doesn't deserve a better opportunity. You're delivering takeout and earning over $10,000 a month, which is just enough to cover the household expenses. What else can you do? I couldn't hold it in any longer and shouted angrily. The combined income of all of you doesn't even add up to my salary. How can you call me useless? If I'm useless, then all of you are even worse. It was the first time I had ever fought back against their constant barrage of insults. The three of them, who usually bullied me, were taken aback by my outburst. My mother-in-law stuttered. Well, you're a man. You should be providing for your family. Plus, Willow's been pregnant for over a month. She'll need even more money in the future. What will you do if you quit your job? What will the baby eat and drink? I could tell that my mother-in-law's intention was to push me to earn more for the sake of the child. But when I heard this, it felt like a thunderclap. And I turned to Willow, asking, "You're pregnant over a month along." Chapter 4. Willow darkened her face but didn't answer my mother-in-law. However, didn't notice the change in Willow's expression and continued talking. Exactly what can you even do? You can't earn money, and you didn't even know Willow was pregnant. What is the purpose of your life? Maria, sensing the tension, awkwardly tugged at my mother-in-law's sleeve. Mom, stop it. My mother-in-law looked confused and gave Maria a strange look. Why shouldn't I speak? Aren't you the one who always criticizes him? Why are you upset when I'm just speaking the truth? I'm telling you, men like him need to be criticized. If you give him an inch, he'll take a mile. I forced a bitter smile. I hadn't had any intimacy with Willow in over 2 months. Not because I didn't want to, but because she refused to let me. She hated the smell of sweat on me, saying that even if I showered and scrubbed myself raw, she still found me disgusting. I thought it was all my fault, but now I realized that it wasn't me. She had someone else. With that thought, I sighed and said, "Because Willow's child isn't mine, right, Willow?" My mother-in-law was about to say something, but when she saw Willow and Maria's expressions, she quickly understood and covered her mouth. Willow gritted her teeth and said yes. So what? I've been tired of you for a long time. You're like a dried-up corpse, and just seeing you makes me sick. She then pulled a divorce agreement out of her bag and threw it at my feet. I was going to wait until you supported me during my confinement and then reveal the truth before divorcing you. But since you've already quit your job, it's clear you have no more value to me. So let's get a divorce. Chapter 5. I picked up the divorce agreement and skimmed through it. To my shock, the agreement stated that I would leave with nothing. She had cheated, and she wanted me to leave with nothing. I couldn't hold it in and laughed bitterly. Willow, with a stiff tone, said, "Yes, the house down payment was paid with the bride price you gave me. And after we got married, you've been paying the mortgage. But in the end it's still my premarital property, so it has to go to me. Even if you sue, you won't win. And you know it yourself. Your savings are all in my account. You don't even have enough money to hire a lawyer." I was speechless. I had met Willow through a friend's introduction and was very satisfied with her. I foolishly agreed to all her conditions, including letting her use my savings to buy the house before we got married. My mother-in-law and Maria couldn't agree more. That's right. My sister didn't even ask you to raise her child. She's been really generous. How many men have raised another man's child for years only to find out it wasn't theirs? Exactly. And you've been living in the house for years. We didn't even ask you for rent. You've been treated with kindness, so don't act ungrateful. Looking at the disgusting expressions on their faces, I felt like all my sincerity had been fed to the dogs. Over the years, I had worked hard to support the family, treated my mother-in-law like my own mother and Maria like my own sister. I worked 2 jobs and couldn't even afford to buy new clothes. Even the thermal underwear I wore was something Willow didn't want because it was too big for her. In this freezing weather, I delivered takeout without even being able to buy a down jacket. My hands and feet were covered in frostbite, And this was the result. Chapter 6. I stared at the frostbite on my hands, lost in thought, forgetting all about signing the divorce papers. But in my silence, the three of them misunderstood and thought I was reluctant to divorce and was trying to cling on. My mother-in-law sneered. "What's wrong? You can't bear to sign. Let me tell you, it's my daughter who wants the divorce and you don't have a choice in this. If you didn't want to be abandoned, you should have been a useful man by now. Not this useless thing." Maria, looking down on me, said arrogantly, "My sister didn't do anything wrong. You're the one who's useless. So of course she has to find another way out. She can't just hang herself on your crooked tree, can she?" Willow's expression was slightly softer than the other two. I couldn't tell if she was feeling guilty or if she was trying to persuade me to divorce. But she sighed and said, "Let's part on good terms. I know you're reluctant to let me go, and that you love me to the point of madness. But forcing something that's already broken will only leave us both bitter. Even if you don't divorce me, and are willing to raise my child as your own, I still don't want my son to call a useless man like you his father." Hearing these words from the three of them, I smiled bitterly without hesitation. I signed the papers. Seeing me sign, the three of them seemed to breathe a sigh of relief, and for the first time today, they all smiled genuinely. Willow carefully clutched the divorce agreement to her chest and said to me, "All right. Now that it's signed, you can leave. Don't forget to go to the Civil Affairs Bureau tomorrow to finalize it." I nodded and immediately pulled out my phone to call my driver. "Come pick me up downstairs, but don't drive anything too flashy. A few $1 million Bentley will be enough." After hanging up, I smiled at the three of them. This was your decision to divorce. Don't come looking for me if you regret it later. The three of them exchanged stunned looks, their faces full of shock. Chapter 7. I ignored the looks of the three of them and left the house, closing the door behind me. But the three of them were only briefly shocked before quickly dismissing it as just empty boasting. They didn't even bother to chase after me and locked the door behind them, seemingly afraid I would regret it and come back. I didn't offer any explanation. After all, money is like pregnancy. After a while others can always tell. But when I went upstairs and came back down, the driver had held his silence for long enough, and finally couldn't help but ask, "Sir, didn't you say you were going upstairs to explain things to the whole family? Then head to the estate together. Why are you alone?" Looking at the home I had lived in for almost 5 years, I sighed and said maybe it's just fate. I had planned to take them out for a nice meal, and then announce the good news. But well, who would have thought they'd only care about me quitting my job, and not why I quit? If any one of them had asked even a single question, everything would have been different. Thinking of this, I broke out in a cold sweat. If they had asked, I would have never known about Willow's affair and pregnancy. She might have even made me believe the child was mine, keeping me in the dark for the rest of my life. I didn't continue speaking, rubbing my temple tiredly, and said, "All right, let's stop talking tomorrow. Take me to the Civil Affairs Bureau at 8 o'clock in the morning." The driver understood that I was in no mood for conversation, and didn't say another word. As I watched the changing scenery outside the window, I couldn't help but reflect. Yesterday I was just a regular delivery driver, obsessed with getting good reviews, and hoping it wouldn't rain tomorrow. Today I was sitting in a luxury car. Life really is the best scriptwriter. Chapter 8. The next morning, I arrived at the Civil Affairs Bureau. When I entered, I found the three of them had been waiting for me there. When Willow saw me, she visibly relaxed and said, "I thought you wouldn't dare to come." I smiled and replied, "Same to you." Willow rolled her eyes at me and said, "Yesterday you were boasting about your $1 million car, and now you think I'd believe that, and beg you not to divorce me. I think you've been eating too much, and now you're hallucinating." I didn't respond, but walked straight to the divorce window, starting the procedure with Willow. My mother-in-law and Maria were a bit surprised at how easily I was going along with it. My mother-in-law muttered, "This useless man looks kinda handsome dressed like this." Maria, noticing my outfit for the first time, furrowed her brows and seemed to mumble to herself, "I don't recognize the brand, but why does it look so high-end?" Maria, who was obsessed with luxury brands and could name them all despite buying so little, had a sharp eye for designer goods. But she couldn't have recognized it, because I was wearing a custom-made suit stitched together by dozens of tailors overnight. It wasn't one of those regular luxury brands. Before she and my mother-in-law could discuss it further, Willow and I had already finished the divorce process and received the divorce certificate symbolizing my freedom. The three of them also smiled as they held up the divorce certificate. I shook my head, turned around, and was about to leave when a strange girl suddenly grabbed my arm with a face full of excitement. She said, "It's you, right? You're the grandson of the lost billionaire George, right?" As soon as she spoke, the three of them, who had been laughing and chatting, went completely silent and stared at me. I pretended I hadn't noticed, smiling at the girl and replying, "Yes, but I don't think we know each other." Chapter 9. The girl smiled back at me and quickly realized she hadn't introduced herself. She handed me a business card and said, "I'm a reporter from Urban News. My name is Anna." I nodded and said, "A reporter? But I still don't know you." Anna nodded and explained, "Yes, but I don't have any ill intentions, and I'm not stalking you. I'm here on business, and just happened to hear your name. I just wanted to ask if I could do an interview with you and your grandfather. After all, everyone is curious about the story of the billionaire recognizing his family. Many people want to know if after recognizing your family, you'll take over the Jushin Group yourself, or hire a professional manager. Others are also curious about how you lived these past 20-something years, and how you got lost in the first place. After all, there are many people like you who have been separated from their families, and they certainly hope to be reunited with their loved ones just like you. If you agree to the interview, it could inspire a lot of people, and even give hope to parents who are searching for their lost children." Anna, being a reporter, bombarded me with questions so fast that I didn't even have a chance to speak. Finally, when she stopped, I was about to respond when laughter came from behind me. I turned around annoyed and saw Willow and her family laughing uncontrollably. Maria, seeing Willow and my mother-in-law laughing so hard, tried to suppress her laughter and stammered, "You're really going all out to make us regret. Hi, yesterday, you were boasting about $1 million car. And today you're wearing a no-name suit. Fine, whatever. But I didn't expect you to hire an extra to act for you. George, are you really losing your mind? I'll tell you this. We won't believe you. My sister can't wait to divorce you. She's so happy she probably wants to set off fireworks. There's no way she'll regret it." Chapter 10. I rolled my eyes inwardly. I had originally wanted to be low-key and decline the interview, but after hearing these words, I nodded and said I can accept the interview, but Anna didn't give me a chance to finish my sentence. She looked at me and Willow's family a bit upset and asked, "Mr. Wong, are you here to get a divorce? Is it because you've become the heir to 100 billion in assets that you're now going to abandon the wife you married when you were poor? Why are you doing this? Was it Mr. Wong's request? Did he find you a new wife candidate? One of those families that do business with the Wong family?" I shook my head and said no. After recognizing my grandfather, I had planned to go home and live a good life with my wife and her family, but you should be able to tell from their attitude towards me. They're the ones forcing me to get a divorce, so I naturally don't need to cling to them. Willow seemed a bit doubtful upon hearing this. After all, she knew me well. There was no way I had any hidden money, and I certainly couldn't afford to hire extras. Seeing that she was about to speak, I smiled at Anna and said, "There are too many people here. Let's find a quieter place to talk in detail. My car's right outside." With that, I walked out briskly and Anna followed, jogging to keep up. Willow and her family quickly caught up too, but when they saw me get into a limited edition Rolls-Royce with Anna, their faces changed instantly. I looked at the driver, David, and gave him an appreciative smile. Indeed, men understand men. He knew I was here for a divorce, so he had driven the most expensive car from the garage. Even those who didn't know cars could tell it was worth a fortune. Willow knocked on the window and shouted, "George, explain this to me. How can you be the grandson of the billionaire? Get out of the car." But of course I didn't get out. I raised the sunshade, signaling David to drive, though I couldn't see them anymore. Their cries could still be faintly heard. Chapter 11. I brought Anna back to the estate and gave her a 2-hour interview, answering all her questions. The next day after the report aired, I received a call from my mother-in-law. Her voice was filled with submission and flattery, sounding extremely gentle as she said, "George, could you come to the hospital? Willow's in trouble. They say a day of marriage equals 100 days of kindness. Could you come for her sake?" I originally didn't want to go, but then I thought not going wouldn't feel satisfying enough. So I packed up and headed to the hospital. Willow was lying on the hospital bed, pale and looking quite unwell. When she saw me, her eyes brightened, and she forced a smile on her cracked lips, saying, "Husband, you came. You really came. You still love me, don't you?" I rolled my eyes but didn't say I was just here to watch the drama. Instead, I coldly asked, "What did you call me here for?" Maria, with a sorrowful expression, said, "Brother-in-law, don't be so cold. Sis has suffered a lot for you." I almost laughed in anger. I had been working myself to the bone for these 3 women all these years, and all I got in return was being cheated on and left with nothing. Yet she was the one claiming to be the victim. Seeing I wasn't responding, Willow struggled to sit up, crying as she said, "Actually, I didn't cheat. I am pregnant, but it was forced. I was so scared. I wanted to have an abortion, but the doctor said it might be dangerous. So I was caught between a rock and a hard place. I decided to get a divorce, so you wouldn't suffer. But my sister was right. You love me so much you wouldn't mind that I was violated. So I chose to have an abortion. I was planning to come find you after the procedure to explain, but something went wrong during the operation." I frowned and asked what went wrong. Chapter 12. When I asked, my mother-in-law visibly relaxed. She wiped away the tears from her eyes and said there was heavy bleeding during the abortion, and they had to remove the uterus. "Willow did all this for you. She didn't want me to tell you, but I know you. You're such a good person. You must want the truth and you'll definitely forgive Willow, right?" I really wanted to laugh, but forced myself to hold it in for me. She cheated for me, got pregnant for me. What a joke. But I didn't say any of this. Instead, I smiled wryly and said, "Is that so?" Maybe because I had been so docile before. Willow thought I believed her and quickly nodded, saying, "Husband, I was so foolish. I only thought about not letting you suffer. But I completely forgot how much you love me. Breaking up with you would hurt you more. Maria is right. Being violated wasn't something I wanted. I should have been comforted, not abandoned." Maria then chimed in, "Brother-in-law, look at it from the perspective of sis being the victim. Please forgive her. We're family, and family shouldn't hold grudges. Don't you agree?" Before I could speak, my mother-in-law quickly jumped in. Of course, from the moment I saw George, I knew he was a good person. All these years I've treated him like my own son. How could he hold a grudge over such a misunderstanding? As she spoke, the 3 of them looked at me with pleading eyes. I felt all the resentment I had suffered over the years vanish in an instant, replaced by an indescribable joy that overflowed from my heart. I couldn't hold it in anymore and laughed loudly. I said, "When I was a useless man, you didn't say any of this. Did you forget?" "I certainly haven't. Should I remind you what you said back then?" The 3 of them looked embarrassed and didn't know how to respond. I continued, "What? Now that you know I'm the grandson of the billionaire, the sole heir, and soon to be $100 billion CEO, you suddenly find something good about me." The 3 of them were caught off guard and looked at me speechlessly. Chapter 13. I paused and said, "Stop dreaming. I'm only here to watch the drama and laugh at you. I know the true faces of the 3 of you better than anyone else. I can never forgive you, and I will never reconcile with a woman like you, so fickle and untrustworthy. Come to think of it, I should thank you," I said, looking at Maria with a smile. "If you hadn't added my colleague on WeChat to monitor me, you wouldn't have even known about my resignation. If it weren't for that, you all would have become rich by now upon hearing this." My mother-in-law was so angry that her eyes turned red without thinking. She slapped Maria across the face and yelled, "You little bitch, why do you have to meddle in everything? Do you know what we've lost because of you?" Maria was not one to suffer in silence, though she didn't dare anger my mother-in-law. She took her frustrations out on Willow. She said, "It's all your fault. You asked me to add George on WeChat so you could cheat. If you had been able to control yourself, none of this would have happened." Willow, already recovering from her surgery and missing out on a fortune, was furious when she heard this. She snapped, "Mom, didn't you tell me George was useless? and that I should make use of my youth and beauty before I regretted it later? Why is it suddenly my fault? At least I married George, and we had feelings for each other. Our marriage was once harmonious. It's you and Maria who kept saying that marriage oppresses women, that we should depend on money, but keep our independence, treating men as tools, as simps. This is what led us to this situation. It's all your fault. As the three of them started bickering, I couldn't help but laugh even harder, realizing I was doing it on purpose. The three of them stopped arguing, their eyes narrowing with hatred as they stared at me. After a while, Willow sneered and said, "George, don't think you're so clever. We called you here to give you face. But since you don't want to start over with me, don't blame us for turning on you." My mother-in-law nodded and added, "George, you'll regret this." I had seen enough of the show. Smiling, I said, "Whether I regret it or not, I don't know, but the three of you, the real scumbags, are definitely regretting it right now." With that, I didn't even look at their faces as I walked out of the hospital room, still smiling. But it didn't take long for me to realize they weren't joking about me regretting it. I saw my second trending topic. George abandons wife and children. What a failure of a man. Chapter 14. I clicked on the trending topic and quickly found Willow's live stream. She was still in the hospital, looking even more haggard than the last time I saw her. My mother-in-law and Maria were also there, both of them with equally bad expressions. Willow cried as she spoke into the camera. "I don't understand why George wants to divorce me. I begged him, asked him to stay for the sake of our child, but he still left without hesitation because of the heartbreak. I ended up losing the baby." As she spoke, Willow broke down in tears, unable to continue. My mother-in-law quickly took over, saying, "We only found out about George being the grandson of the billionaire after seeing the news. That's when we realized he's rich now and doesn't think our daughter is good enough for him anymore." Maria sighed repeatedly, offering comfort to Willow and my mother-in-law before continuing. "I really don't understand. Why is it that when men get money they turn bad? George has been my brother-in-law for years. He ate and lived with our family, and we always treated him as one of our own. We never pressured him. We just thought that being together as a family was enough. But who would have thought that sincerity couldn't bring sincerity in return? My sister has been through all this, and I just want to ask him, did he ever truly care? But George only mocked her, saying she wasn't good enough for him, saying she deserved it. We couldn't take it anymore. So we decided to do this live stream. Our goal is to let the billionaire see George's true face and not give the company to this ungrateful scumbag, this vampire." After hearing this, the comments in the live stream flooded in so many that it was dizzying. Almost all of them were insults directed at me. Chapter 15. After the live stream went viral, my grandfather quickly held a meeting, gathering a team of crisis management experts and lawyers. He was furious but still comforted me, saying, "George, don't worry. I know you're not that kind of person. The men of the Wong family have never been the type to abandon their wives and children." The crisis management team and lawyers chattered among themselves for a while before one person awkwardly spoke up. "But this is a difficult situation to handle first. There's the divorce. Everyone knows that the young master got divorced the day after recognizing his grandfather. Even though we know it was Willow who initiated the divorce, no one will believe that. Even if we can prove it was Willow who wanted the divorce, people will still think the young master hid his identity and intentionally seduced Willow into getting involved. Second, the child is already gone. Although the young master says the child wasn't his, we have no evidence. People these days love to gossip about the rich, and they prefer to believe the victim. So the young master's reputation is really hard to salvage." I frowned and said, "How is it hard to prove? As long as we find evidence of Willow's affair, the truth will come to light, right?" I thought for a moment and quickly listed a few steps. After I finished, everyone nodded in agreement. My grandfather let out a sigh of relief and said, "Hearing you say this, I'm at ease. Actually, I've already started investigating this. Even though you have Wong family blood, you didn't grow up with me. I've always been worried that you might be mediocre or too kind. But now, seeing how bold and strategic you are, I can finally retire in peace." So that's what it was. No wonder such a simple matter hadn't been handled yet. Could the rich really be this naive? Chapter 16. Because we were rich enough. It didn't take long for us to gather evidence that Willow had lied. I didn't hesitate. I immediately began to clear my name. First, I revealed Willow's affair records. This wasn't hard to find. I even found a witness, her balding boss Makoto, who said indignantly on camera, "It was Willow who seduced me. She even forced me to divorce my wife. And now I've lost everything. Here are our chat records. You can take a look." While everyone was busy reading the hundreds of chat messages, I wasted no time in releasing our divorce agreement. It showed that Willow and I had divorced. And even though I paid for the down payment and the mortgage on the house, I still ended up with nothing. Willow's family was clearly quick to react to this. As soon as I started to clarify things, Willow went live crying. She explained, "I don't understand. I just wanted an apology. Why did you have to spread these horrible rumors about me? You knew I lost the child, so you bribed my boss to slander me. Are you going to deny giving him money? Of course I had paid him, but I didn't need to admit that. Instead, I released my trump card. 2 video clips. One was surveillance footage from the day I came home. It showed the 3 of them mocking me and admitting that the child wasn't mine. Ironically, this surveillance footage had been installed by my mother-in-law, who was suspicious of me. She had lost her gold bracelet, but refused to admit it, insisting that I had stolen it. To find evidence, she had specifically set up surveillance in the living room. Since the 3 of them didn't understand digital devices, I had the installation and the account details. After my identity was revealed, they immediately deleted the footage, but what they didn't know was that I had set up automatic backups, fearing I might be wronged. So the footage they deleted was quietly stored on my cloud storage, providing irrefutable proof of my innocence. The other video was of me visiting Willow in the hospital. Of course, I didn't go to the hospital just to get some personal satisfaction. I was there to gather more evidence. Chapter 17. These 2 videos didn't just reveal the truth. They also exposed the ugly faces of the 3 of them. The online sentiment quickly shifted. The netizens who had been deceived and used as pawns were furious. The people who had been insulting me turned around and started attacking the 3 of them in the live stream. The comments flooded in. "Give me back my money. I spent $100 on gifts for you while eating fast food to help you out. I really can't believe I was so blind. This is so satisfying, right? George may have been a late bloomer in terms of wealth, but this counterattack is incredible. It's like a real-life revenge drama. Good things come to good people. If George hadn't wanted to surprise them, he would have been ruined by these 3 bitches in just a few minutes." Willow was forced to end her stream, and her account was quickly banned. The money they had earned hadn't even been cashed out yet before it was frozen. Not only that, but I also sued them for defamation and other charges before they could sell their house and flee. They were already in custody. In the end, the 3 of them were sentenced to 2 years in prison. While they were in jail, they called me countless times. I would occasionally visit them, giving them a glimmer of hope, letting them think I was sentimental. But after a while, I would personally shatter that hope, leaving them desperate and broken. After a few rounds of this, they never dared contact me again. Meanwhile, I went on a blind date arranged by my grandfather and found a well-matched, virtuous, young and beautiful wife. The day they were released from prison, my twins were born. After their release, their house was auctioned off because they couldn't pay the fines. The money from the auction was partly given to me and partly to the deceived netizens. After all their schemes, the 3 of them ended up with nothing but a reputation in tatters. They regretted it so much they almost choked on their own bile. But there's no remedy for regret in life. The 3 of them became the targets of everyone's scorn. And with nowhere to hide, they eventually had to return to their hometowns. No one dared to go out, and they couldn't find any work. In the end, they resorted to selling their bodies. I heard they were rounded up several times before disappearing without a trace. Despite all this, as long as I wanted to, I could find out anything. But I wasn't curious. I only needed to live my life well and manage my company. That was enough. The past, I just considered it a not-so-happy dream. From now on, I would live happily and prosperously,